Matthew chapter 10, Jesus sends out the 12, and we talked about the focus of their activity, which was the lost sheep of Israel, and the message, which was the kingdom of heaven is near. One of the things I didn't say last time that should be said is that for us, we would, as Christians on this side of the cross, we would immediately understand, all right, the kingdom of heaven, well, that's Jesus, the gospel, that whole thing. An Israelite would have heard it differently. Because, well, the biggest difference between us and them is, for us, it's already happened. It's already a done deal. For them, it was prophecy that they dreamed of the fulfillment of. So the kingdom of God, for some Israelites, like one of the 12, Simon the Zealot, they didn't call him a zealot because he was so enthusiastic. They called him a zealot because that was it was a political sect. These people, the zealots, were not evil people, but they wanted to overthrow the Roman government and for Israel to be its own sovereign nation and rule itself without the interference of the Roman government. And they were willing to go to violent measures to make this happen. When Simon the Zealot heard the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven is near, you know what he was thinking? Israel is going to be what we dreamed it would be. There were a lot of Israelites that they longed for that, and they hoped for that. I can easily see how they would misunderstand this message. But at the heart of it was an accurate understanding of this for them was that God's rule, his domain, is near, among us even. It is here for us, kingdom of heaven. As I grew up being taught about and believing in heaven as a real place, and I still believe it, I think the kingdom of heaven is here. It's within us. Israelites may or may not have drawn that as a conclusion. Okay, the kingdom of heaven is near. And then here is their activities defined: heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those who have leprosy, drive out demons. Freely you have received, freely give. And then in verse 9 he says, do not take along any gold or silver or copper in your belts. Take no bag for the journey, or extra tunic, or sandals, or a staff, for the worker is worthy his keep. Now, I'm trying to phrase this in a reasonable way. I have heard people, their view is, and that's what it should. If you're going to be a pastor, that's what it should be. I've told you before, my dad was a preacher, and every church that he served, every single one, seemed to have the philosophy that God, you keep him humble, we'll keep him poor. And by golly, they did. I he's this is for the 12. This is not to establish a universal pattern for ministry. This was for the 12, and I think there's more than one reason why Jesus would have said this. One reason I can see is because if you're not taking all of this stuff with you, first of all, it implies you are a sojourner. You're not packing up to live there, okay? So this is a temporary arrangement wherever you go. Secondly, you need some of these things you're gonna need. Well, you have to trust that God will provide them. So it's an issue of faith. And then in verse 11, Jesus gives a little, this is a technique, okay? Whatever town or village you enter, search for some worthy person there and stay at his house until you leave. How do you find a worthy person? Jesus doesn't even give instructions on that. I wonder if part of the deal here was that God would make it clear who was worthy. Another part of that would have had to be, I think, you do a little bit of research. You don't go spying on them, but you ask around, wouldn't you? One of the things that makes a worthy person, in my opinion, well, the first thing is they are trustworthy because they're honest. They keep their word. And another aspect has to do with how do they treat people. Watch them a little bit. Okay. Stay at this person's house until you leave that town, okay? And in verse 12, as you enter the home, give it your greeting. If the home is deserving, let your peace rest on it. If it is not, let your peace return to you. This is an interesting phrasing at the very least. I do not think that Jesus is saying, make your peace come over this house. You enter it and give it your greeting, which for a Jew would have been shalom, peace. And that whole word shalom is much bigger than our English word peace, but it's the best, simplest translation. And if the home is deserving, then you let your peace rest on it. You don't cause anything. You've given a greeting. And if it's a worthy place, if the home is worthy, it's not the structure, you know that. But if it's deserving, let your peace rest on it as a blessing. If it's not, then let your peace return to you. In verse 14, if anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, shake the dust off your feet when you leave that home or town. Wow. I mean, that was like a object lesson. I'm not even going to carry the dust from, well, it could be a household. It could also be the whole village. I'm done here. We're done. And then Jesus goes on in verse 15, I tell you the truth, it will be more bearable for Sodom and Gomorrah on the day of judgment than for that town. Yikes. Well, he's not endorsing Sodom and Gomorrah. He's just using them as a cautionary example. And then in verse 16, oh, by the way, so this is not just, well, it's their option. It's no biggie. No, it is a biggie. If people reject the message of God, the message of Christ, and in this context, the message that the 12 brought, that the kingdom of heaven is near, if they reject that, this is serious. Okay. And then he says in verse 16, I am sending you out like sheep among wolves. That to us, if you're not a farmer or a sheep herder, sheep and wolves, that's not a good thing. Okay, in the life of a Jewish shepherd in Jesus' day, the sheep were their greatest enemy was the wolf. I don't know a lot about wolves, but I know this much: they run in packs, and they are vicious. Sheep have no defense. They don't. A sheep would, even if they tried to fight off the wolf, there's no hope. Okay, this is a strong statement. You're like sheep, and I'm sending you out into a culture of wolves. Okay, so it's not like it's going to be so great. You're going to be out there preaching and teaching and healing people and staying with good people and having your needs met. And it's just, you're going to love it. No. It's going to be hard. Sheep among wolves. And then he goes on, therefore, be as shrewd as snakes and as innocent as doves. A very interesting phrase. Shrewd as snakes. Well, I don't know that he meant that literally. I don't even know how shrewd snakes are, although I do know that snakes are some snakes are able to blend in with their surroundings, so much so that you don't even know they're there until you're on top of them. Okay, shrewd. But Jesus is not talking in terms of zoology here. He's talking in symbols. The snake, the first mention of a snake was in Genesis, when the serpent, the snake, tempted Eve and was cursed to slither on its belly and eat the dust. And the Hebrews, these 12 Hebrew guys, they would have instantly, boom. They're not thinking king snake, rattlesnake, whatever snake. They're thinking the serpent. He was cunning. Be cunning, but as harmless as a dove, innocent as a dove. It's a tough blend. How do I be shrewd and innocent? Yeah, it's a pretty big topic. It's going to take more than the 45 seconds I've got left, so I'm going to come back to that next time. Maybe you ought to think about, how can you be shrewd? Is it wrong to say wily? And yet, as innocent as a dove. Well, that's all I got for today. I'll see you next time on So Care with Stevie Boy.